Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Mr. Pandaria raiding guide, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the heroic mode version of Durumu in the Throne of Thunder raid. Now in order to complete this fight you're going to want to bring 1 to 2 tanks, however 1 is easily doable if you have a hint paladin, as the majority of this raid seems to be. 2 to 3 healers, and 2 is again preferenced, the more DPS you can bring the better. And then the remaining a mixture of both melee and range DPS. Now if you can get it down to 2 healers and 1 tank and then have 7 DPS, you should aim to have this boss dead during the 3rd light spectrum phase. So you'd have a light spectrum, a disintegration, a light spectrum, a disintegration, and then just as the 3rd light spectrum is starting or started, you should be looking to kill the boss off. This is bearing in mind that you have managed the life drains correctly, but we'll speak about that later on in the guide. Now, quite a bit of this fight is the same as normal mode, but a lot has changed in order to kind of, give it that heroic feel and make it a heroic fight. And it's quite a challenging fight. It does require quite a bit of coordination, and hopefully it will give you a bit of a run for your money. So, like I say, quite a bit has still remained the same, so you will still have the force of will ability, which is where he will, target a random player, and anyone that stands in the purple of doom will get knocked back and pretty much one shot. He will still have the life drain ability, where you need to swap and switch players in order to make sure that they don't give him too much health back, and he will still also do the disintegration beam and the light spectrum phases. Just as a quick side note as well, if you are looking to solo tank this, then your tank should be looking to clear his stacks using, whatever crazy ability he has, after receiving 5 stacks of the Serious Wound debuff. And just to jog your minds back, the Serious Wound debuff is the one that gives you less healing received per stack. So obviously if you've got 5 stacks, you're going to be getting 50% less healing. So the first big change that you've probably noticed in the background already is these massive walls of ice spawning, and these will spawn, I believe if you have 7 DPS, we got them 3 times throughout the entire fight, possibly a 4th time, and these are pretty much just a bee in your bonnet. They are what they are 3 walls of ice, and they separate the room into 3 different sections, and the only way to get into a different section is to actually kill off the walls of ice. Now, naturally, these are going to occur at really awkward times, so you will find that these occur during a disintegration beam phase, well, at the start of one, so you need to get them killed straight away, or during a light spectrum phase when you need to be moving around the room, so like I say, at really useful times. So as soon as the walls of ice spawn, you want to kill off one of them straight away. This just gives you quite a bit more room to work with, and then kill off the other 2 as and when you need to. In order to make sure that we weren't getting separated into the different sections, we had a central stacking spot that we used, and it was pretty much just where, when Durumu faces forward for the disintegration beam, it was just to the right of that, and this was our central stacking spot for when the walls of ice were going to come. So like I say, we're all together and nothing bad to happen to people that might get separated. We assigned 2 people to kill the walls of ice, and as you can see we have 2 shamans in our raid. It's brilliant having them just spam chain lightning because they kill things straight away. However, if you don't have the joy of 2 shamans, then you can also opt for any other class really that's got some kind of decent nuking potential to kill them off as soon as possible. Next up, we have a new eye. Conveniently, Durumu is a massive eye, so why not give him 4 eyes on heroic mode? So you will still have the 3 eyes from normal mode, the mind's eye which casts force of will, the hungry eye which casts the life drain, and the appraising eye which casts the lingering gaze. Now the new eye that you have is called Evil Eye, conveniently, and it's pretty evil. I'd say it does its job during this fight. And what this eye will do is cast a debuff onto a random player in your raid called Dog Parasite. Now this debuff can be dispelled, but hold your horses ladies and gentlemen, as you do not want to dispel it straight away. Now this debuff starts off at about 30 seconds on the player, and as the debuff ticks down towards 0, it will increase in damage the longer that it is on that specific player. So if its first tick's, 10k, its second tick will be 20k. if its second tick's 20k, its third tick will be 30k. That's not the pattern it follows, but it's just an idea that it will increase in damage for each tick. And once you have dispelled this dark parasite off a player, if you do, then it will cause that dark parasite to morph into a dark plague. Now the dark plague's duration will be equal to the duration that was remaining when dark parasite was dispelled. So if it had gone from 30 seconds to 5 seconds, then dark plague will only be up for 5 seconds. You need to bear this in mind as it is quite important. Now the dark plague will spawn a wandering eye every 3 seconds, and what these will do is attack random players in the raid for moderate amount of damage. So obviously you don't want any wandering eyes spawning, but granted you probably are going to get a few. In an ideal world, none will spawn. So what you want to try and do is use cooldowns on players that do have the dark parasite debuff on them, and then just let it run off them if possible. Try not to dispel it, again, in an ideal world, but don't blow all your cooldowns because you will need them as the fight goes on. Now what you're probably also thinking is, good as well, why on earth do you have 2 shamans in your raid? Well, that's a very good question. Shamans, it turns out, have a very useful ability called Grounding Totem, and if you use the Grounding Totem at the right time, i.e. just before Dark Parasite is cast, then the Dark Parasites will attack the Grounding Totems and not players, thus removing that ability from the fight altogether. So if you can get your hands on some shamans, then I'm just saying, take them along, and you won't need to worry about Dark Parasite. Just make sure that you do actually put, 1 shaman in each group where possible. That way, they're not going to be having 2 grounding totems trying to cover one group. They will go for each different group and hopefully cover all your players. And earlier on in the guide, I did also mention the life drain ability. Yeah, this is quite a biggie on heroic mode because you don't really want to get Durumu healing himself. So what we did was we, again, used the central stacking point that we use for the disintegration beam phase as kind of a move here when absolutely nothing is going on. This means that we're all kind of together for when the life drain is cast, and we can take the debuff off each other as and when we need it, and of course by doing this you move in front of the player that currently has it on them. Now we recommend only taking 2 ticks at a maximum of life drain, however where possible try and only take 1. This means that he's going to heal for less and everyone's going to be much happier in the long run as the boss dies faster. You should also be aware that you can actually get life drain at really awkward times. So for example, you can get it during the light spectrum phase, and when this does happen you need to make sure that you handle it well. If you don't handle it well, then he's just going to heal for loads and potentially kill off players that you need alive. And finally, we are going to move on to the quote-unquote big boy of this fight, and that is the light spectrum phase. This is what we feel kind of has made this a heroic mode fight, because it can be a nightmare if not handled well. So there's a few things that have changed, and we'll just go over them one by one in order to make it easy to understand. So first of all, you need to know that in heroic mode, light spectrum can only last 80 seconds. If it lasts any longer than that, then Durumu will cast his obliterate ability and just, obliterate everyone in the raid and just kill them off straight away. That's the death part of it, gotten rid of. Next of all, you need to be aware that the yellow beam now has a new mob, and this is the amber fog. Now, this is like the crimson fog and the azure fog, the blue and the red one, except it's a yellow one. And this, of course, is revealed by the yellow, or bright light as it is called. Now, the amber fog will deal 15k damage to everyone for every 10% health that it loses. So it's not much, but it does have a low health pool. I think it's just over 1 million, so this damage will be outputted relatively quick. However, you do need to kill it as soon as possible, because the yellow beam does move, and if it's not killed within the time, as in if the yellow beam moves away from it, and the amber fog is still alive, then it will just explode like the others do, and it will deal 500k damage to everyone in the raid and pretty much equal a wipe. Now, we'll talk about damaging that in a moment, but next is kind of the big bit, And because in the heroic mode, each different, colour is going to deal so much damage to you based on the stacks that you have, you kind of can't take too many stacks. So for this, we need to be setting up groups of people, and we had 2 groups of 3 and 1 group of 4 in our raid. And what we would do is we would assign each group to go to a different colour of the spectrum. So group 1 would go to red, group 2 would go to blue, and group 3 would go to yellow, and they would stay in that spectrum for that entire, light phase part of the fight. That's only that one though. The next time light spectrum is cast, the groups would move to a different colour. So for example, group 1 would move from red to blue, group 2 would move from blue to yellow, and group 3 would move from yellow to red. This should reduce the amount of stacks that people have on them from their specific, colours of the spectrum, and it should reduce the overall damage given to the raid. Now, we do understand that, you might cross over the different colours at certain points during the fight. That's fine. Just try and move close to the boss, because the actual section is thinner there, so it will not be on you as long, and it won't give you as many stacks. Now back to the damaging the amber fog part. We kind of just said, okay, if you're in the yellow part of the spectrum, then you're the ones that are just going to focus on the amber fog, because it only has 1,000,000 health and it will die very, very fast, you will find. Everyone else is just to focus on the crimson fogs as per usual during this phase. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is Durumu on heroic mode. It's a relatively fun fight, and not to brag, although it's not really much of an achievement this far into the tier, but we managed to kill Durumu, I think it was in about an hour of raiding. So like I say, if you can get the mechanics down, then the fight is relatively simple to kill. So yeah, it's just down to managing mechanics and making sure people don't do stupid stuff and they're in the right place at the right time. Pretty much like any other boss within World of Warcraft, except it's on heroic mode. Bear that in mind. So, as always, thank you for watching, and if you are interested in future Mr. Pandaria raiding guides, then please do feel free to subscribe to the channel.